Today we deal with an ambush in the Drakewald Forest. We follow up with a surprise on the road.
And then the heroes make a decision that will follow them for a long time to come. I am Chris.
And I'm Matt.
Welcome to Roleplay Chat.
And welcome back to another episode in the Blood and Betrayal campaign diaries. We're going to start off by giving you guys the narrative of the campaign that we played through with Chris as the game master and myself as one of the players. And that's going to be followed up in the second half of the video with our usual thing of the behind the game master screen, where the two of us ask each other questions about the game.
Great. So let's get into it.
All right, so we left off last time with the party tracking Granny Mosher into the Drakewald Forest, and they found her collecting herbs in the dirt, surrounded by what ended up being elves with bows drawn.
Yeah, a small group of elves left over from battles surrounding the area. And as the hero get into this open space surrounded by elves, they start trying to be like, what's happening? And the elves quickly accuse Granny Mosher to be some kind of witch. Who else would be in the middle of the Drakewald Forest gathering herbs in the time of war? That makes no sense. So they assume that she's alone and she must be there to gather herbs for her spells or whatever.
Kind of doing things associated with dark magic or chaos, things in the world of Warhammer which are extremely frowned upon and, prohibited basically.
Yeah, so the heroes trying to talk, no, she's with a group,
she's our healer, she needs the herbs to do things, and the elves aren't really too convinced with this. So this is when Ungrim, our dwarven slayer in the party, approaches the elves, looks them dead in the eye, and vows to them. He cuts his hand, makes a blood pact with one of the elves that's there, staring them down, and says that no, Granny Mosher is not a witch. She does not meddle in dark magic, and if I find that she is, I will kill her, behead her, and wear her skull. He says this completely straight, like...
That was intense.
Yeah, it was really intense.
Yeah, and even though the relationships between dwarves and elves are not great in Warhammer, in the lore of Warhammer, still elves know that a dwarf oath is reliable. So...
Especially a slayer's oath. I'd say even more so.
So they're like, okay, you deal with it. You deal with her. And that's pretty much where they left off. They bring Granny back to everybody else, and everything goes fine for the rest of the night.
Granny's grateful that we got her out of this trouble. I'm not sure, had we not been there, had she...
Oh yeah, she was panicking the whole time. She was saying, I'm innocent, just let me go. So no, she was not very comfortable in that situation, and the heroes did great.
So after that kind of traumatic evening, we continue along the road to encounter even more trouble, basically. So the next morning, as we're traveling on the road, we run into what appears to be a couple of different wagons, kind of like wreckage. There's corpses lying about, a dozen, maybe 15, 16 bodies that seem to have been attacked or another kind of ambush of sorts.
The scout mentioned that, and then a little group of the heroes, Captain Schreiler, Father Pieta, Granny Mosher, for different reasons, for healing, for praying for the dead and stuff like that. People, a little squad, if you may, of people go there, and the heroes start removing corpses because it's blocking the way. And Randall finds arrows that, with a good check, finds that it's greenskins arrows. So they're like, oh, there must be goblins. So they start being a bit worried about, are we going to get attacked, but we need to clean the road.
And we wanted to clean the road so that we could get through, wanted to give these people a proper burial, or at least as close to a proper burial as possible. And as we're starting to clean the wreckage, we hear screaming and a kind of a crash and a boom. We quickly turn around to see Father Peter had fallen into, I guess, a remnant of a trap that was laid, presumably by the greenskins.
Yeah, so they basically put that to cover the archers, and there was a hole that was not used in the combat, so it was still there. And as the hero gets to the edge of the pit, they see that there's spikes at the bottom, really crude wooden spikes, and Father Peter is partially impaled on them.
He's still breathing, but having a really hard time, and he kind of shouts up to the rest of the party that's above him, and he tells them, I'm not going to make it, but I have this relic, this artifact of my god, Sigmar, that I need to bring to Middenheim. I'm going to entrust it to you to bring. And he kind of like holds it up, and we work our way slowly into this pit. It's 10, 15 feet down, and we work our way down to grab it from him, and we promise to him that we're going to take good care of it, and that we're going to make sure that it makes its way to the Temple of Sigmar in Middenheim. And with that, he breathes his last breath, kind of relief, I guess, and passes away. It was sad. It was the first death that the party had to face, and it definitely kind of left everyone a little shocked. I know Diedrich was impacted by this because Father Peter was the person that he was the most associated with, basically, in Untergard. He was kind of like his friend. He was this confidant that he learned from when he was there. So with Father Peter at the bottom of this trap, Diedrich feels obliged to pull him out. He gets Ungrim's help, and they take him out of the trap to, I guess, again, give him a proper burial, and the two of them mourn his death.
As this is going on, Randall sees that there's something wrong with Granny. Like, she seems upset somehow. So he talks to her a little bit more and learns that a city, so on the crossroad, one of the way go to Fandorf, a abandoned city, and Granny Mosher is looking in that direction and is saying something like, I used to come from there. My dad died there, accused of something he did not commit, and died for it.
Yeah, and she was shaken by it. How much of that can be attributed to the events of the night before, it's hard to tell.
With this new death also, she tried saving Father Pieter, so there's death, and now she sees something about her past, and she's very upset about it.
So the party clears the road, buries some of the bodies, and gives service to the death of Father Peter, and they continue their way towards Middenheim.
Yes, and so they have one last day to camp before getting there. So, as usual, bedrolls.
They set everything up.
They set everything up. And again, a couple hours after dusk, they hear a child cry. Friedrich, the child who was lost in the first game, like during the battle with the Beastmen. Friedrich says Granny was weird all day, like since she came back from the crossroad, and she talked about like someone deserving. So it's really vague at this point. The kid is crying. The heroes are trying to get information out of him, but they suspect that she went back to Fandorf.
And we suspect strongly that she went back to that crossroad. So we basically pack up our gear and turn around and go right back to that crossroad where Father Peter died. We work our way back in the night, using Randall's tracking skills and his bird hack roll. And we take the route towards Granny's old town, or I guess where her family's from.
Yeah, and as they approach, they can see a light, a big light, like not a torch light, no, a big fire.
Like a bonfire almost.
Yeah. And as they get closer and closer, I think one of them scouted, probably Randall, and they see that Granny is there in front of a bonfire, and there's wolves all around her. And at first they're kind of, oh, what's happening? Is she getting attacked again? Mm-hmm. But then they realize that no, the wolves seem to be protecting her somehow.
And the fire is, starts off as what you would expect a normal fire to be. But as we approach, we notice little hints of sparks of colors: green, red, blue, purple, brown, and it feels off. It doesn't feel like everything's going the way it should. And we kind of have these flashbacks to the night before, these accusations of the elves, and start to think, what's going on here?
Yeah, and as they approach, so Otis sneaked around, but some of them just approach to talk to her, like, what's going on, right? They're friends. And as they get closer and closer, the bonfire with all that weird colors, it starts to increase in magnitude, and then she gets lifted in the air as if almost her body is possessed, but she kind of still has her mind. Looks at them and says, "Help me." And she seems to like lose the control of what's going on, and starts to speak in a weird unknown tongue that's really it's a bad omen.
Yeah, and Diedrich, being the scholar that he is there trying to decipher what she's saying, and even he doesn't know, but he does know that she's speaking in a dark tongue, a tongue that's associated with chaos and evil and darkness. So at this point, the decision becomes obvious. We need to get Granny out of this trance. We need to save her. So we try to approach her, but the wolves begin to attack us. Ungrim takes out his trusty battle axe and starts swinging at a handful of wolves that attack him, because he's at the front line and is able to kind of dispatch of a few of them. Randall, in the distance, shoots his bow at some of them, and it hurts them badly, hearing whimpers, which actually makes it worse for Randall, because he would much rather they be out of the misery, and he kind of feels it, oh no, these poor creatures.
Yeah, if he didn't like shooting beastmen, he definitely doesn't like shooting wolves. So as they manage to dispatch the wolves, Omgrim gets closer to Granny, and I think actually he was with the wolves, and
he was busy with the wolves, and Diedrich in the back. He's not much of a fighter. He takes out his crossbow and tries to shoot Granny somewhere like in the knee or something, to try and wake her up without causing too much harm. Unfortunately, he misses his first shot and then misses the second shot. But out of sheer chance, the wind picks up and kind of pushes the flames of this large bonfire onto Granny, which really, kind of shocks her system and takes her out of this trance, and she starts to fall to the ground.
Yeah, so she falls to the ground close to Umgrim, but Umgrim still has a couple of wolves to deal with, but she's not out of it yet. She starts convulsing on the ground, shaking, and still saying like, "Help me," because she hasn't got control of her body again. But they broke the fire.
It started to calm down. The colors disappeared. Yeah. And there's Granny shaking on the ground, convulsing, almost having like a seizure of sorts. Yeah. At this point, we consider it to be a small victory. We've sort of calmed it down. Ungrim works his way towards Granny, leans over to kind of what appears to be lifting her up.
Yeah, and everybody else is pretty far off, and the wolves have been dispatched. Everything seems to be a lot more under control.
But out of nowhere, or I guess we should have seen it coming, really, Ungrim swings his battle axe down and beheads Granny Mosher.
And then everybody freaks out.
I'm at a loss for words as to how I was feeling about that. It was ridiculous. The Diedrich, Randall, Otis are all in complete shock. What just happened?
Yeah. Randall is like, just stop and just what Umgrim with his friend, newfound friend, killing her, his maternal figure, basically. Like, it does not compute.
Pretty much. We finally get our tongue back and are able to speak, and we approach Umgrim and we tell him what just happened. What did you do?
Yeah.
And at this point, you know, we're wondering, do we still trust him?
Yeah, because remember, the players, that's their first game at this point. So they're like, maybe there was some hidden in the background of Umgrim that he's crazy, or we don't know, right?
So we asked Umgrim, what did you do? Why did you do this? And he had a very reasonable response. He said, I swore an oath that if I noticed that she was doing anything related to chaos or evil,
just magic, even like a witch,
I would kill her. Stone cold, just I would kill her. That was my oath. And I remember still being taken aback by it, but the other heroes were able to notice, you know, this is a thing of loyalty, this is a thing of truth. Umgrim, although committed something unspeakable, it was still with a lawful act. You know, it was still something that we could still trust him. Although it might be difficult for some of us, especially for Randall. We could still trust that he will do what he says he's going to do. And he basically said that he would be here to protect us, to get us to Middenheim. So, you know, we weren't worried that he was going to turn on us, kind of thing, but that there was still a seed of doubt placed there.
Yeah, now everybody was looking at Umgrim differently, as if like, yeah, he's a slayer. Like, he kills stuff. He's dangerous and unpredictable.
So we come back to the group, to the rest of the villagers from Untergard, and basically have to deliver this news that Granny is dead. We don't say that we beheaded her. We don't say that she was practicing dark magic or anything of the sort, but we basically say that she got taken by wolves, and we are able to convince the people of leadership, like Captain Schreiler and Mr. Bomer, that, you know, she's gone. There was nothing we could do. And we continue the road to Middenheim, now with a second death on our shoulders.
And a significant one, like for players, characters, and everything. It was a great way to end this session. So they arrive at Middenheim. They see that the city is still standing. It's a kind of a fortress city, but there's clearly marks. The walls are scarred. There's
mass graves.
There's even some of like cultists, like chaos warriors, still hanging from the sides, because they had like hooks on the walls, and they died there, so they're still hanging. It's there's marks of cannon and stuff like that. So, but it's still standing. There's still the banner of Todbringer and the Emperor. So they're glad to be there, and that's when we finish this session.
Yeah, so it was a great session. Now we're going to enter our second half of the Blood and Betrayal videos, the campaign diary videos, where we're going to spoil things. We're going to spoil elements of the story. So if you don't want to have these things spoiled, I would encourage you to skip to the end of the video. Or you know what? You're probably safe to stop here. Thank you. We'll see you next time. For those of you who do want to know, let's keep on going. Let's get into the intricate nitty-gritty details, the game master stuff.
Yeah, and also maybe explain some of what was happening even behind the story. For example, the fact that Granny Mosher was actually used to be a brown wizard. So it's a wizard that deals with beasts. So she can control wolves. Something we didn't mention really in as we were retelling the story is there was a crow often. Like, it was a crow at the crossroad. There was a crow a couple of times, and I believe you found a feather of a crow also the night before one of the nights she left. And basically, Granny Mosher had the ability to turn into a crow. That's why like she would just disappear.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, so that was one thing. And
another thing too, for those of you who did watch the spoiler last time, you guys know that Diedrich is a blue wizard. Wizards in the world of Warhammer can actually kind of put on a sixth sense, where they can determine if other people are using magic. And I remember doing this quite a few times to sense if Granny Mosher was using magic, and I did, and noticed that she was using, like Chris said, this nature magic, brown magic, but didn't see many hints of I don't think I noticed any black in there.
No.
So this even made it more of a shock when we found her there doing this dark ritual.
Yeah, you found. I remember saying something like, "It's there. There's definitely she's a magic user, but it's dim. It's as if she hasn't done it in a while. It's she's not like a super powerful user of it."
Exactly. One other thing that we wanted to mention was Diedrich's ability to use premonitions. So in this case, I actually had Diedrich spend an evening secretly trying to look into the future, trying to see what might be going on in the days to come. You know, we've encountered a lot of dangerous things on the road. And in this premonition, I noticed wolves, and I think I noticed a fire.
Yeah, there was a fire, weird colors, and the face of a wolf through it.
So I took that at face value. I figured there might be wolves coming, and I tried to convince the party that, you know, we're going into the woods, into the Dracold Forest. There's going to be wolves. I didn't really tell them why, and I tried to convince them, you know, let's look into how we could defeat wolves. Does anyone know, you know, their weakness or what have you? I don't think it proved to be very useful, other than the fact that we thought we might encounter wolves. But it was a cool way for me to. It was my first vision.
Yeah, and it was a good foreshadowing too for what's to come. So it maybe gave you. Well, that's a question for you, I guess. Did it give you confidence in your ability to see the future? Because it was pretty close to what happened, but it was hard to interpret maybe.
Yeah, that is a good question. It definitely, how do I say this? It gave me a baseline understanding of what my visions were. Because, you know, the first time I did it, I wasn't really sure what to expect. Was it going to just flat out tell me everything? And I think I did a pretty good roll, too, if I can remember correctly. So it kind of gave me this baseline, like, okay, these visions contain information, but it's going to be incomplete. It's not going to necessarily give me too much of an advantage going forward. It's just going to help me piece everything together so that I can maybe try to avoid it or equip myself the right way.
Yeah, and as the game master, that was kind of the idea of, I don't know if exactly what's going to happen, but I have a good idea of where it would go if nothing would change. So in my head, if nothing would change, they would get to that point with the fire and everything. I don't know how it's get resolved or anything, but so that's why I gave you basically an insight into my head of what I think was to come. But it's always the balance of
these two things, not giving us too much, right?
Yeah. So something I worry a lot when I game master is, do the players feel they have a control a bit on the story? So I was wondering, Matteo, did you feel like you could have prevented some of the thing that happened? Did you feel it as your action mattered in this game?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting question, and it's something that I was thinking about too, right? I was, especially with having these two deaths that happened, I was wondering how much of this, again, was the story railroad that you were setting for us. You know, you kind of started the whole game, even before we started playing, saying like, guys, listen up, there's going to be a lot of railroading this first game. I definitely felt like the death of Father Peter was something that you had planned. I don't think there was much of say for us to have in that, really. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know if you have...
Should I answer?
Yeah, sure. Let's start with Father Peter, and then we'll maybe talk about Granny after.
Oh, okay. For fodder, so the way I do a lot of things is I put that event. So yeah, in my head it was there. It didn't come up out of the blue. But I remember having Randall made a check for the arrows, and actually I made him do a check. He did fair, so I gave him the arrows. But hidden underneath that check would have been
the trap.
If it was high enough, it would have been the trap.
Okay.
So it was still possible, but it was hard. And a thing I did is I put a map. And one of the reason was because I wanted you to believe there was a goblin attack coming up. But the other one is I wanted you to move your characters because Randall was close to the trap, was the only one who went close to the actual hole.
Yeah.
So that's why it was kind of hidden underneath. But so I put the event, and that's what I expect to happen. But often, and it happens more and more as we're gonna go through the campaign, sometimes a good check just changes my expectation. Like it throws everything off the window. So it's it could have been possible, but I would say maybe 90% that was gonna happen.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
Okay.
What about Granny? What happened? The whole thing with Granny Mosher.
The whole thing with Granny. That was definitely something that happened that shocked me as a player. I think it shocked everybody.
Yeah,
as
me
a player.
too as a game master, actually. So some of it, at least.
And I think part of the reason I felt less helpless in this case was because Granny's death it happened because a player did it. It happened because, Ungrim made an oath that it was his word. He had to keep his word. And even when the player playing Ungrim killed Granny Mosher, he didn't just, without consulting us, kill her. He kind of made the action, saw everybody else.
The players.
Yeah, not just the character. Out. Yeah, the players kind of like, oh my god, you're doing this?
What are you doing?
And then we kind of had we took ourselves away from the game for a second and said, okay, do we really want to do this for the story?
Yeah, and it was not like a big 2-minute discussion. I remember it being 5 to 10 seconds. Be like, well, I'm gonna do that because I promised it. And some people be like, what? And other ones be like, just do your thing. Do your thing.
If that's what your character would do, and you made that vow, it makes sense. Go for it.
And then he's like, yep.
And then so he did it.
And I'm like, whoa, all right.
So I felt like that was, it was something that happened, but we had a much more obvious role in it happening. So I felt like there could have been things that we could have done. Had we saved her and not killed her, maybe we could have asked her what she was doing, stopped her from doing it again, whatever, like purify her soul. I don't know, but you know what I mean. Like we could have done something else. Even working up to it, there were signs that she was upset. There were signs that we could have maybe caught on. I don't think we did. We weren't paying enough attention. But in retrospect, had we wanted to, we could have asked her about her background. We could have, went to that town with her or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely felt like there were more gears that we could have stopped or interacted with.
And for sure. And Granny Mosher was at the core of many characters, so I wanted to give you many angles to see what was to come. Father Pieter was more at the background, so that's why, I think you're right. There was a lot of other things that could have happened regarding Granny Mosher.
So I've also prepared a question for you, Chris, about this game here, and I was wondering, Granny Mosher, obviously something caused her to make kind of basically snap like that. A lot of it seemed to be hidden from us as players. What exactly caused her to do what she did? Summon demons or whatever it was.
Yeah, so in my head, Granny Mosher was a kind-hearted old lady who used to practice magic and kind of stopped to take care of the orphans and everything. So from that aspect, nothing really was different from the player's perspective. But I knew there was something about her dad being killed actually in front of her when she was younger, being accused of something he did not do. And that was under the authority of the Graf Sternhauer, who was in charge. And I don't know if you remember, but in the city of the first city you met, I mentioned the fact that the leader left in a faraway tower and left everybody there. That's the descendant. That's, I think,
of this guy.
Oh no, actually, it was the son of this guy.
Oh, okay.
Who basically, they're not great leaders, and they tend to like just take the money, the power, and not care about anybody else. So that was kind of one of the event that triggered the like feeling of anger inside of her. The fact that again they're left.
Okay.
And then when she saw there was death at the crossroad, and she saw their way leading to her city, she was even more angry. And one thing that I established but not fleshed out all the way was the fact that she found a parchment about a ritual to summon to punish someone who did wrong. So that was kind of how it was given to her. I did not fleshed out how she received it, but I know she got it maybe weeks before. Maybe it was after the battle. She found it on someone, something like that. And
she was like deliberating whether or not she was going to use this, basically.
Yeah, she had it in her back pocket. And when she saw these two events, and there was other things in the background, but that's the main two events.
Yeah.
She saw that, she was like, I have this, I have to do this. So she went to collect herbs for the spell. And then the second day, she went to actually do the thing. But in her mind, it was kind of hidden in the spell that it was bad. She was not that powerful, right?
Yeah.
So it was just punishing someone who did wrong. And she's used to dealing with like little magic. Yeah, she can transform. That's probably her biggest spell, like transform into a crow. But as she starts, she immediately like basically the parchment controls her and uses her as a vessel to summon. Should I tell you?
Sure.
Yeah, I should tell you. To summon a lesser demon.
Okay. That
was his goal. The demon was gonna just go kill that person and then wreak havoc around that region until it would have been dispatched. So in my head, if that would have happened, then you would have heard probably rumors, or maybe you would have gone to deal with that. I don't know. Because in my head, it was going to be a flying demon. So it would like fly, maybe do a little bit of damage and just fly away to do this. And then Granny Mosher would, if this had completed, would probably die after. So it was basically a demon of vengeance and anger that she did not know controlled her.
Did she suspect that it was like dark magic? I know that wizards in the Warhammer universe kind of swear an oath not to meddle in those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of like denial. I think it was really denial. Like she figured maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it's just like it's a lesser of two evil kind of deal.
Yeah.
Like
and
it's to punish the guy. Yeah, exactly. And justify the means. So that was her spirit. She was getting older too, and a lot of frustration. She saw a lot of people die. She's been treating wounded and dead people for weeks. There was a little bit of a snap because there was a lot of anger, and she got the opportunity.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. Oh, that's kind of neat.
Did you find that satisfying?
Yeah,
as an explanation?
I think so. It's definitely always tricky sometimes to see what really motivates these NPCs, and that's something that we're going to talk about hopefully soon in an upcoming roleplay chat video. So for now, I think that covers most of what we wanted to talk about. We look forward to seeing everybody next time in our next video, and hold on tight. Things are just going to get worse. I think that covers it all, Chris.
That's all, man.
Let's call it a chat.